We have yet another report that Colorado is inching closer and closer to becoming a member of the Big 12, and this time it comes from somebody who has been completely out of the Big 12 v Pac 12 fray. Welcome into the channel. I am John Kurtz. Here on this channel, we talk conference realignment, college football, and college basketball from a Big 12 slant. Please consider subscribing if you have not. Would appreciate everybody who does, and make sure you click the bell to get alerts when I'm going live, which is Wednesday and Sunday, and when I drop content throughout the week. John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo as well if you'd like to support the channel there. What we have today is a report in a column from the Oklahoman's Barry Tramel, a guy who has been at the Oklahoman since 1991, so he's got over 30 years of experience there. He is one of the elder statesmen of Big 12 media and very, very well and widely respected, and not somebody who has weighed in here on this Big 12 v Pac 12 thing basically at all. Have not seen much in terms of reporting coming from Barry Tramel throughout the whole conference realignment saga going back to Texas and Oklahoma leaving. I say that because before we hear what he's about to say about Colorado, I think that's important. Everybody assumes that there's some kind of angle, some kind of slant that people are working at every step of the way, and Barry Tramel has not been that guy. And I would not have expected him to be. That's not really his reputation at all. You can still take this all with a grain of salt if you want. That's totally fair. We've seen plenty of reporting and people thinking they know what's going on here with Colorado or the Four Corners or any schools, or on the other side, the Pac-12 TV deal timing, and tons of people have been wrong and had to change their stances. Totally get it. But I'm giving you the information that we have here. So let's dive into Barry Tramel's article from the Oklahoman. Starts by saying Colorado joined the Big 7 Conference in 1948 and stayed through its various iterations for 62 years. Could the Buffaloes be coming back? A Big 12 source told me last week that Colorado is ready to commit to joining the Big 12 soon. And that's in quotes. The soon is in quotes. So the Big 12 source says Colorado is ready to commit to joining the Big 12 soon. Tramel says, I thought it was interesting, but not necessarily a revelation. Lots of talk in this realignment crazed era of college sports, most of it not written on tablets descending from Mount Sinai. But the Colorado comment has a lot more juice after the events last week. So Tramel is telling you, he kind of held on to this for a week, right? He didn't just go with this when he heard it. He sat on it, and then he saw the slew of headlines that have come out within the last week that have been, once again, negative for the Pac-12. And we're going to talk about one of those, which is Washington State having to go into a hiring freeze because of financial issues with their athletic department. But the point being here, Tramel has not been a carnival barker throughout this, and he did have some discretion in when he held on to this before he decided to actually print it. So the issues that he's talking about within the last week, number one, Washington State President Kirk Schultz on Monday issued a variety of spending freezes in the wake of the Pac-12's financial crisis. Number two, the New York Post reported that ESPN and the Pac-12 are having no substantive talks about extending the league's TV contract. And number three, CBS reported a couple of weeks ago that Big 12 officials were told by ESPN the Big 12 would be one of three leagues that ESPN would air in terms of a Tier 1 level. That would be the SEC, the ACC, and the Big 12, not the Pac-12. And Tramel says all of which cast further gloom on the Pac-12's financial future. Speaking of that, Kirk Schultz put out a statement, the president of Washington State. He is somebody we've heard talk a lot about the Pac-12's media deal. He came up with a theory recently that it was only going to be a matter of time that they had something set up, but that optics were the issue because their partner is having to lay off a bunch of people and they didn't want optics of this massive million and millions of dollars deal coming out in the wake of that, which now I think seems silly in what we've seen transpire the last couple of weeks. ESPN, for instance, agreeing to sign up Pat McAfee for a very long time at a huge contract. That was speculation that could have been one of the partners. Anyway, we've seen that. We've seen Schultz pigeonhole it with timing before. In fact, he just kind of did it again, which I would think make Pac-12 leadership folks cringe that they continue to timestamp this deal. My point is, I'm just saying, well, he is a well-respected guy, and I don't deny that, and he is in the inner circle of Pac-12 leadership. Take some of what he's saying with a grain of salt because of the financial situation that his school is in and the overall situation that Washington State is in. I would just provide some caution there because, again, everybody's working an angle. Kirk Schultz needs his fan base to be as calm as possible. They're getting heat from it because Washington State knows its place in the world, which is unfortunately not going to be a great one if the Pac-12 does break up. And they're seeing now this real financial stress be plopped on their doorstep. So they have every reason to want to do anything that they can to try and make the environment more positive surrounding what this TV deal is going to be. So his statement basically outlines here, I'm just going to paraphrase the first part of this, but they had It's mentioned the decrease in money coming in because they're having to pay the Comcast deal, right? They have the Comcast deal that's going to cost each school a handful of $1 million apiece, where for years Comcast was overpaying, and that dates back to Larry Scott kind of screwing over the league as far as that goes. He also says relocation of the Pac-12 headquarters out of San Francisco exceeded budget projections. And additionally, WSU projects Cougar Athletics exceeded its expenditures for the year due to inadequate documentation of revenues and expenses. So they've had financial issues all the way around, and because of that, here's the kicker. It says, Director of Athletics Pat Chun shared with athletic staff earlier today immediate actions that will be implemented to help offset the deficit. Among others, these actions include a temporary freeze on all current and future vacant positions until further review, as well as a pause on non-essential travel, purchases, and new professional development. So no non-essential travel and no new hires right now in Washington State athletics world because of the financial stress that they are under right now. So it's yet another negative headline for the league, and I know that the spin is going to be like, hey, Larry Scott's fault. We've seen John Canzano write about that here now recently, just using Larry Scott as a scapegoat, which is okay, fine. Larry Scott certainly put them in a rough spot, but at some point, you got to start pulling yourself out. And Kliavkoff has waited on this TV deal, and it seems like they are in a pretty tricky spot right now with the backdrop of the Larry Scott stuff that has set them on a bad path for a while. That's why everyone is saying that they're in a pretty rough spot right now. The other thing to me is just, like I said earlier, the biggest takeaway from this is just like you gotta start taking Schultz's comments with a little bit of a grain of salt as well, because he needs this to be positive more than anybody out there. They need to keep their fan base calm, and they need this TV deal to come through very, very badly. So everybody's got a little bit of an angle. Everybody's got a little bit of a slant out here. I'm just saying, if we're going to do that for people on the Big 12 side, like the Dennis Dodds of the world, we need to point out some of the realities of the situation for the Kirk Schultzes of the world on the Pac-12 side too. Back to Tramel's article, it says since USC and UCLA announced their 2024 move to the Big Ten, and Brett Yormark went public with his desire to expand the league westward, the Pac-12 has seemed vulnerable, but the prevailing opinion was that the Pac-12 members would find a way to stay together. That's becoming an increasingly difficult decision financially. Talking about Colorado, Tramel says CU football has received a tremendous jolt from Deion Sanders, but the gridiron in the Flatirons has been largely dormant since Gary Barnett left the coaching office 18 years ago. Points out Colorado's only had 2 winning seasons since then, and one of those was the 4-2 2020 season. In men's basketball, the Buffaloes have fared better with the Pac-12 than in the Big 12, but have still made just one NCAA tournament since 2016. So, pointing out some harsh realities about Colorado, and I'm not even going to dispute any of that. They have not been a great athletics program at all, but what they are is a blow towards getting the Pac-12 sunk, and unfortunately that's kind of the reality in this situation. You're going to be better off as the Big 12 with one less competing conference out there to try and be the best of the rest league when all of this continues to consolidate. All right, so let's close with this from Tramel. It says the Big 12 will still remain significantly behind the Big 10 and SEC in revenue, but it's leaped ahead of the Pac-12 and the ACC, the latter of which is tied to a contract through 2036. And I appreciate that from Barry Tramel, because we have seen some folks in the college football world just spouting out there that the ACC would be number 3 here recently, and that's actually not really true. If they're going to stay locked into their current TV contract, the Big 12 will be surpassing them ever so slightly in revenue here. The Big 12's newfound stability is attractive to Pac-12 members wondering about its future, especially Colorado, which already has a history with the Big 12. Both the New York Post and CBS reported that ESPN still could consider a limited package with the Pac-12, which might be that conference's lifeline. So stay tuned, but it only takes one school to jump for others to follow. Some in the Big 12 believe Colorado is that one. And there you have it. That is the column in a somewhat stripped down version of the column, I guess I will say, from Barry Tramel. Certainly go read the whole thing in the Oklahoman if you would like to. But that is the major gist of it. He is saying that he was told last week that Colorado could be joining the league soon. It's another report to throw in there. And the interesting part about this, once again, if you have a takeaway from here, interesting part about this is it's not one of the same suspects, the usual cast of characters that we've been seeing in this realignment game. Once again, make sure you subscribe to the channel if you're a college football fan, if you're a Big 12 fan, if you're a conference realignment fan. I'm live on Wednesdays and Sundays. The live shows are a great time. I also throw in content like this throughout the week, so make sure you click the bell to know when it is that I'm dropping content. You can support the channel on Venmo at John-Kurtz-4. You can follow me on Twitter at JLKurtz. Appreciate all of you guys being here. Take care, and I will talk to you soon.